Can I, yes, I will. Let's try the other one also. Yeah, make the microphones forward. Everybody important is in the room so we can get started. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And so my name is Anne. I work for the Alliance Bioversity-CIAT. Yeah, we have hopefully a very interesting event this afternoon, but I'll hand over to the main master of ceremony immediately. So, Pedro, please take the floor. Let's switch it off. No? Yes. Thank you, thank you for the panelists for being here. Thank you. This is going to be a family event. That's great because, so you were saying the important thing here is to meet each other. So the event today is going around the topic of silvopastoralism and climate change. This starts as a shared project between the Committee on Forestry Working Group on Drylands, Forest and Silvopastoral Systems, and the Alliance Bioversity-CIAT. So what we are trying to do here is to strategy and how can we enhance the pastoral systems to increase the contribution to climate mitigation to carbon storage. That's quite an important topic because we know that rain plants and the pastoral systems store a lot of carbon in the soil, but we also know that there are room still to improve this role. Besides the multi-layer structure of the pastoral system, the incorporation of rods, the grazing mountain, the shadow, the trees, the vegetation, all of these elements contribute to increase the amount of carbon storage in those systems. At the same time, improve production. At the same time, helps the animals to adapt to climate change. So that's our background. That's our intention to map the existing carbon reserves in pastoral system, to analyze future scenarios, to model the way carbon is stored in those systems, and try to devise a strategy from here on how we can improve silvopastoral management with the carbon storage in mind. That's the objective of this shared project. That's what we are working on. And this event today is first contact, first delivery of the early results, and also somehow to get impulse for us to really produce all those outputs. So the idea today is to set the ground, to set the scene on this item, and then to have some room to discuss some of the more pressing issues on this. For this targeting this discussion, we have invited Luigi, who is here to give us the keynote presentation to set the theme and bring all our mind to the same point to start a discussion. Please, me. Okay. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. As Pedro said, this is like a family, which is it's nice to have a chance to meet in the scope.
Ah, right. Anyway, so the topic of today's presentation is potential of silvopastoral for adaptation and mitigation in the context of drylands. So first, I'd like to have some quick facts about drylands. They cover approximately 41% of the Earth's surface, spanning over 100 countries. And they house around 58% of the global population, supporting 44% of the world agriculture. In addition, white organism where they house almost 10% of the world's livestock population. They are also home to some of the most unique ecosystem, and they provide habitat to about 50% of all known plant species. Unfortunately, 10 to 40% of the drylands are degraded for implementation. And something which I don't know you're 27% of the total soil carbon is stored in the soil. Complex about silvopastoral for the dryland area, I mean, which is 1.4% CO2 stored per hectare annually. And you can see here from 68 to 204 of carbon is stored per hectare in the silvopastoral system. So it's a huge difference, and I will touch on this later on. So silvopastoralism are important component of extensive goat production in the Mediterranean region. They provide up to 80% of the diet requirement of grazing animals in the area. Silvopastoralism system and forest remnant, they store up to 27 to 163 more carbon compared to open pasture land. And this is a call to plant trees in our regions. Unfortunately, despite the efforts, these ecosystems are facing degradation worldwide. So why so pastoralism? The microphone is sometimes goes back and forth. You know? This one doesn't work at all.
It's even worse. They do it.
Right. So silvopastoralism is increasingly recognized as a key strategy for climate adaptation and mitigation in vulnerable ecosystems, especially in the face of the climate crisis. By gaining traditional knowledge with modern innovation and ecological practices, this approach can empower local community providing both ecological and economic opportunities. So what are the benefits of silvopastoralism? It is combining grassland with trees. So there is increase in carbon concentration, beneficial microclimate effect, reduce heat stress, enhance water quality, or soil temperature in the summer, soil moisture control, improve soil quality, potentially higher pasture production and difficult condition, increase biodiversity, reduce wind speed, improve wildlife habitat. I mean, this is huge. And I'm sure more people back on this. Actually, next slide is about soil, or I know is the expert. I just mentioned the name enrichment, nutrient cycling, improve soil structure, reduce soil erosion, nitrogen fixation, enhance the soil microbial activity, and increase organic matter, which will be actually number one. So, I put this slide because there's a lot of talk about the potential of carbon sequestration when we talk about grassland and still not convincing that national can support it. Certainly, science, we need to develop technology to manage and quantify this potential. What makes it really difficult is the potential building on so many factors. One of them is the soil type, the climate condition, vegetation species, the management practices, and the land use history. This is sometimes we pass light for it. This to emphasize that the results which we have and the publication we have, there is really differences about the potential. I mean, you can see here from 36 to 200 carbon per hectare. I mean, I don't know how many grams it's maybe 7 points. Just to give you an example from around the world, but the estimation is still very well depending on maybe the year, and this is special session just to discuss this maybe a project which can do into this. And in livestock and climate, we are trying to compile the data for different parts of the world, Sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, and Latin America. But the work has to continue into the. So now what are like some of the methods of adaptation and mitigation to enhance the potential of decarbonization? So the first one, I'm going to talk about silvopastoral is having a multiple level of vegetation, which increase overall biomass and above ground carbon storage. I mean, you can have trees, you can have shrubs, you can have the herbaceous strata. All this is good for the environment, especially in the humus-based system. They offset the emission from fertilizer. So this will go into the and it's actually goes to the animal breeding. A higher peak conversion, so we will significantly reduce greenhouse gas emission per unit of animal. And these two aspects, I think, and ICAP is working part of it on these aspects, but I'm sure all the partners are doing so. Animal husbandry, including like improved management, land implementation, this is like site specific, so there is no one size fits all. So depend on specificity on the sites. Proper grazing, and I will touch, I have a slide on this aspect because it's still to a weak point in many restoration projects. And all like the adoption of alternative energy technology that includes use of shrubs and dank as fuel as a management practice. So these are just some idea. The slide about livestock, because we always while and even undergrazing can cause overgrazing or can cause degradation. And the key is the timing. And you can have like high intensity short duration and you take the animal and you get like a beneficial outcome. So, and I like this quotation which I took from this publication which was published a few years ago by partner. It is not the cow, it is the how. So it's like a human because we are very good animals. And we know how to train, how to move them well, and everyone can say. And you can overuse, for example, when we plant our dormant season, without using any impact on the vegetation. While during the growing season, you have to move fast. And you can use grazing to reduce the invasive species. So these are all things which are detailed, but in practice, I don't really see it happening. So, I mean, this is what I say. I go back to the condition of the soil surface. I mean, why people try to use animals, because you can walk down oxidizing material, which you can see. This is a terminal plant. I took from this part of the world in Kuwait, and they took me to a place which is, they told me it has been protected, and we were thinking this is their doing a good job. And when I entered the site, it was really in decline. Because back of the world. So if you exclude the result completely, the results will. The next slide is about something which we did under climate. It's a collaboration between IUCN and Encarta, and we published a book which has what we call SLM, Sustainable Land Management. But in addition to describing each practice, we have what we call like case study. How do these tools in particular set up? So I have two copies here, but I have some postcard which you can download from your computer. And this booklet, these are like the main element or steps for successful restoration. And I can list all of them, but I'm going to put more emphasis on the one I second. So, of course, you have to have a type of governance and partnership. The next step is to identify the root cause. This is something we should pass lightly. Most people are thinking just to plant shrubs or trees and we're gonna do result. It will not happen. So you have to, if the site has been, for example, it is like what we call alternative of cultivation. It's monoculture. So we use the tractor to grow the land. Year after year after year, what will happen? So it's breaking with it. So even if there is the land, there is no vegetation, there is nothing we can track. So these are the little what happened in this area. So is it over because the result also has detrimental effects. Is it encroachment of cultivation and so on? So it's like if you are sick and you go to a doctor, and also you go and do a diagnostic. So they will ask you a question about what kind of or drugs what allergy to. Your parents do they have like diabetes? Do they have any type of sickness? So they have to take this into account. So we have the same with our land. You have to treat it like, I don't want to say human, but it could be land is live. That's not I seeing on week. So you need to define the goal and objective to and this as a system model, set up robust monitoring system. And next is the grazing system, and that's what I just talked about. It's still a weak point in our restoration across the region. And not only here, but elsewhere. And of course, you have to have evaluation performance to document evidence. So this is one example. Yeah, we had one example. I forgot about it. So this is participatory silvopastoral system in Jordan. So it's really an arid area, and it's less than 200. So if you go there and do the stop, so the stop is gentle, less than 5%. You don't need to do any water harvesting technique. So the soil is crusted, like hard planning. I mean, if the water is a drop of water, it will make erosion. So so then you have to do scarification. And then I will say before install cement is cement in addition to scarification. So this is just to make people think before using any tools. And I want to touch here on and pastoralists. I think you have heard about this throughout the UNCCD club. And I'm working with there's like working groups on the education neutrality. And with this group, but I like, I'm saying if we can do that here, we work on coming up with a policy brief with recommendation to UNCCD. So this was prepared by the working group. And it has a similar recommendation, and there is a flyer which I have like 500 copies of these, which I have to bring with me. So feel free to I feel bad because it's still there. Some of the main action plan for action for UNCCD includes one of them is to include all projects. It's about land governance and equity to strengthen the governance, multifunctional land use, so sustainable land use practices. We need to solve the conversion problem. This is what I was talking about. Recognize pastoral mobility, it's what the dream which I mentioned, and then there is economic and policy technology. So this is, if you need to learn more, there is plenty of copy to take. So some of the silvopastoral system offer a unique solution by providing sustainable alternatives to mitigate the impact of climate change, supporting both adaptation to changing conditions and mitigate of climate impacts. So from the results of the literature, if we integrate trees with grasses, we can achieve more carbon sequestration than having just pasture land. And we need to change like this mentality. So we need to have like change in behavior for education, training, and awareness. And here is to work together. I mean, I know in Tunisia, for example, we have a site where it's under the department. And since maybe our organization, the forest department never worked with the soil and conservation, and it's really pity. And it was only for the first time that these two departments and the same ministry have agreed to work together, and the results were amazing. We need to keep in mind that protection and long-term explosion of livestock is detrimental to our grassland and rangeland and silvopastoral. And remember and keep in mind that livestock is the solution. It's part of the solution. Grazing is a tool if you know how to use it. And we should use this opportunity of the COP16 to really raise global awareness about the potential of silvopastoralism for global decarbonization. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, William. Any clarifying question? If not, I would like to also introduce another colleague of ours in the room, Dr. Paul, who currently works for GIZ. Dr. William Plus, she's a well-known, we still consider her colleague, someone who I think I see a lot of nodding. So we have asked Deirdre, who kind of now from a bit more of an outsider position now that she's no longer our colleague, and to maybe give some remarks to this. Maybe I'll give you the microphone. Maybe you sit here and still talking to you, Maria, right? Yeah, so thank you for this presentation and thank you for providing me the opportunity to provide a few remarks. I don't want to repeat what I said this morning. And I will not challenge the science in this talk because that's not my role anymore. But yeah, I'll try and provide a few comments maybe from a very practical point of view, right? I work for GIZ, so we are the German Technical Corporation. We implement we are one of the institutions that implements the German Development Corporation. So I'm going to look at it from a very, let's say, implementation and scaling point of view, right? So I have 3 comments, and maybe they're comments and they're also questions. And you don't have to respond to all of them. Maybe it's also a good inspiration for the panel discussion just now. So my first is, and that's maybe, I don't want to be the devil's advocate, but I mean, you have this long slide of benefits of silvopastoral systems, and it all looks beautiful. They can do anything, right? Economically, environmentally, silvopastoral systems are beautiful, right? So I'm just wondering, and we have been talking about, it's not since today that we talk about silvopastoral systems. So I'm really wondering whether we can, in the discussion during the session, talk about the barriers and disadvantages, because there must be some, otherwise everybody would be doing that, right? We would all agree. If it's like, yeah, if it was all great and beautiful, then everybody would be doing this. Then the second, and that comes maybe more from my role right now, so we work very closely with the African Union, the Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources, AUIBAR, based in Kenya, and they're about to initiate the process of forming a common African position on environmental sustainability across livestock systems in Africa. And they keep asking us one thing, they keep saying, so what are the concrete solutions? You keep talking about climate and what works where? So I'm just wondering, so there's a real need for concrete case studies, right? So, and I think during the panel, there's going to be some more concrete case studies. So I don't want to, right? Maybe that's more for the discussion, but it's really like, okay, silvopastoral systems can look very different depending on the context. I know that we all keep saying there's no one solution fits all. There's not one thing that works everywhere, but yeah, where are these very concrete case studies that we can take to the AU, that the AU can take as guidance to the member states to really inspire them to implement these systems? And then the third question is, and I've been commenting on that in the session this morning, and that's really, incentives for finance, right? If you want to do this at scale, we keep talking about carbon. Everybody thinks about climate finance. So the question is really, how can we make this work? And what is still lacking that there is... I think in Latin America, there is some climate finance for silvopastoral systems, I think, or in deforestation-free livestock systems. I don't think in Africa there is a lot of climate finance or environmental finance for livestock systems, including silvopastoral systems, right? So what is the problem? Is the problem the scale that we can't quantify it at the landscape level?
Or is the problem that it's too slow, so carbon is too slow? Is the problem we can't quantify it properly, right? So yeah, we work with several development banks, multilateral development banks, and they're interested to invest more in livestock and in livestock with a strong climate angle. So I'm just wondering, like, can we discuss a bit more about like what can we actually give to those development banks as guidance and say, look, this is a great investment case. This is how it pays back. Yeah, this is how we can move forward. Maybe I leave it with that.
No, I think these are really good question. I don't claim I have any solution for any of them. But let's start one by one. Right on, we can look to part of this. So you said it looks all nice about silvopastoral. And what are like the weaknesses? Silvopastoral. So you have three components. You have the trees, you have the gaseous strata, and you have the animals. The trees takes time to grow. So if you want to start this and you want to go for outscaling. And if you want to plant a tree, who's going to protect the tree from growing? People have access to the land or not. And I think so this because I think these were we should be implemented. Using some technology, looking for like depression from the landscape, they can accumulate water, but to protect them has been a nightmare because the community they will not really accept the need alone. So this is like one it's the socio-economic and I mean, there are a lot of benefits in this. If we go for like multi-industry, like this in Sudan, because if we plant like say like plants which has storage value, they will not really go here. It has like like a value chain. It could be kind of it could be depending on the country. And close to the settlement. And it protects them somehow using like spines we see like to protect chance. So this is like one of the language we have to do for outscaling at large scale for silvopastoralism because it's open access and there is no control and it will not work. So unless you have something which is already established and you want to promote it, that's really what's possible. So, but let me ask the people who are here. You may have a solution.
This one. I'd like to add something to what you're saying, maybe more technical from the technical side. And as you know, maybe in Colombia, we have like a very big experience with silvopastoral systems, right? And one of the problems we have to scale silvopastoral systems is their high cost. Because as you said, we need to protect the trees from the cattle so they don't eat, seems they take a long time to grow, right? So we have to protect those trees. We have to also use native species. Sometimes in silvopastoral systems, we use introduced species too. And sometimes they're very invasive, such as leucaena. We have worked with that a long time ago, and it's from Mexico. And also in Mexico, I studied in Mexico, and I also got to see in ranches where they have silvopastoral systems where the leucaena is very invasive, so we need to control it too. So that has a high cost, and also trees need water. So that increments the cost of implementing silvopastoral systems.
Anybody else? Let's see.
Well, I actually wanted to put Berta's question back to her because now that, and take this very sincerely, we need scientists working on the other side. Like you are a treasure, Berta. So from your perspective, now, GIZ, what do you think is that barrier, that one that we can unlock? You mentioned, is it that soil carbon is too slow? Is it that people are not investing? Like, what would be your suggestion? Is it that we are horrible at communicating? Like, seriously, like, what would be your one suggestion to us as the scientists to really start unlocking the investment? Yeah.
Yes, let me ask.
I mean, fair enough. I asked a question that yeah, you're right. Maybe I didn't ask. So, there is something about packaging. You're not bad at communicating. I think okay. In general, CGIAR is not bad in communicating, but there's something about packaging and about delivery of technical expertise. I think in the research, there's a lot of technical expertise that we are not yet know how to package it and deliver it. And I'm just saying, yeah, I mean, I gave you the example of the African Union. I mean, they ask us that very concretely, give it to us. Like, they are the specialized institute asking us, like, give us the solution. So we're still figuring out with them also, how do you need it to be packaged, right? Is it that you need like an info brief or, you know, but still like information is all over the place. So there is something about packaging and delivery. And I think research doesn't have enough time to allocate to that. There is a lot of technical expertise that's not about research, it's about getting it across. And the second, about the banks, I asked the question about development banks. That's probably something we have to figure out with the development banks, what they actually need to really deploy it. I think it's the business case. It's very clearly, I mean, you talk about costs. We need to be honest about those costs. So the question is, how can we finance those costs up front and get return? Yeah, so that's, yeah, for banks, it's the economic piece of it.
Did you want? Oh, okay.
Maybe a last comment.
Yeah. So I jumped to the last question because we are into that because management are not getting. I mean, management are not getting like enough funding compared, for example, to forest. Forest, I mean, they have, I mean, source of funding. I was thinking about, especially for this conference, the UNCCD, because they entrusted, they agreed on this 15.3 the LDN, which is about to stabilize the degradation neutrality. So why not come up with an LDN bond? And remember, the LDN is voluntary by governments. So while people manage their land well and sustainably and job, they don't really get rewarded. Why not? I don't see that. I mean, society has to pay for it. I mean, if the land is degraded, everybody is affected by it. So people, I mean, we can start small, having like pilot sites, and come up with some criteria, of course. I mean, there should be some criteria to assess the degree of degradation among the gradient, and then come up with a scale, and there should be pooled funding for the bond, and people benefit like the carbon credits. And you'll be amazed how people, they will change their behavior if there is the city incentives. So this is, I was going to say this today, in this morning, there was like a high level request with FAO and but I don't have the chance to speak. But this is my idea, and it could be a crazy idea. But why not? We have to think outside the box. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Stay there. Maybe at the end we have time for general speaker. So maybe you can take a seat in the chair in the soft sofas. Okay. So it's okay. So you can see. during this time later. So thank you very much to our keynote speaker, our keynote inquirer, Ben, and the dialogue. It looks like we are going to talk, but we have a schedule to follow. So I'm going to invite Liban to here and talk about one question that is always around, but is somehow difficult to address. Is how we are sure that the things that we are doing are actually working. How can we talk what we do? Thank you very much, Jan.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here because, okay, I guess I don't have an opening slide anymore. It's fine. So I really appreciate being here because I'm a soil scientist and I work at World Agroforestry C4E Craft in Nairobi. So I'm not here to talk about planting trees and rangelands. I'm here to talk about monitoring and in particular to highlight the critical role that soil play in sequestering carbon as a climate change adaptation and mitigation solution. And this is a paper that came out last year that 1/3 of the global terrestrial carbon stocks are in where? Grasslands, rangeland, and savanna soils. This is a photo I took of northern Kenya. And what do you see here? Roots. And they're quite deep. This is only to about 1.5 meters. But grasses have deep roots. And that's why they can store so much carbon. They also have these fine roots going off of them that die every year, putting more organic matter into the soil. And so that's why we're here. I couldn't agree more. We need to narrow down these wide ranges so that we really understand the carbon sequestration potential. Unfortunately, as we also said, these dryland systems are often the most degraded in terms of soil erosion. This is a publication from 2019 that we did, and here I'm just showing an example of a time series, 2002, 7, 12, and 17. Bright hotspots mean more erosion. So, and for those of us who love Kenya, most of us in Meru, this is Maralal, Nanyuki, Meru. What are we seeing? An increase of the hotspots of erosion or a decrease? We're seeing an increase. And this increase is in these dryland systems. So despite their huge potential to store carbon, they're also being degraded at unprecedented rates. To further make my point, we did a study of over 6,000 publications because we wanted to see what is the current status of the 6 principles of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And I promise you, I have this slide before this talk, okay? I didn't make up these data. Barriers, forests, drylands, and there are, real gaps. The wider the arrow, the bigger the gap. Grasslands, drylands, what are the big gaps? Scientific research. Of the 6,000 publications, 6% are in grasslands and 3% in drylands. And the majority were in what? No surprise, forest. So this is why it was such a pleasure that at the luncheon grasslands, it's full. 300 people were in that room. We finally have rangelands on the agenda. So does that not work? Okay, so we need investments in soil health and rangeland health monitoring to fill these gaps. And I think this is our role as the scientific community to fill that gap. And then Dirta is going to give us courses on how to better translate this into action, into a simple communication messages. So everyone here knows the LDSF, the Land Degradation Surveillance Framework. This has been applied in over 45 countries, but what you might not know is we're building a big, impressive database in the rangelands. Who knows where this is? Kalama Conservancy in northern Kenya. I show this photo because the LDSF starts where? On the ground. People are collecting soil samples. People are measuring heights of trees. People are doing infiltration, looking at grasses. Unfortunately, not too many grasses here. This is a field-based method. And it's been applied consistently across 45 countries, 250 sites. Each site is 100 square kilometers. And we're finally doing repeat visits, so we can start answering those questions. Why is it important to use the same method everywhere? So you can make comparisons. You can compare because the sampling design is the same. And we can also produce some maps that I'll show. So I only have a few data slides, but I know we're all grass lovers here, right? Oh, yes, here too. Yeah, and I was like, oh, yeah, just presenting data over here. Cool. I loved it this morning. These are frequency of occurrence plots. Now, remember, these are 3 different LDSF sites. They're all the same size, all the same number of plots, 160. And yet, even if you can't read the names, you can see that this site has less number of species than this site, right? And this is an intermediary. Now, what Anne doesn't know is I've spent the last 5 years learning how to identify grasses, and it's my new passion. So I actually take photos of grasses, and I've highlighted the different grass species, like Cynodon plecturus is the most dominant here. This is an interesting one because we're seeing that not only does it have less species that it has are iconic of degraded systems, compacted soils. We need those grasses because the role is to break up the soil, like oropectin. This is my new favorite grass of the week, Sporobolus helvelis. If you can see, it spreads and it holds the soil together, can take over grazing and the D word, drought. So now we're building this big database of grass species diversity. We can tell the functional traits. So we went to COFO. Guess how many grasses they have in their functional trait database? 3. There's 1,000 grasses in Kenya. So we are actually working to build this functional trait database so we can look at this indicator species because we said rangeland restoration. Guess what they're planting? 3 species, none of which are the dominant species here. They're going right to the climax species and skipping all these other important species that need to hold the soil together first. The next thing we do is look at carbon. So I was making fun earlier about the box plots, but I actually do love them. So these are box plots of topsoil and subsoil carbon. And remember, 160 topsoil plots, 160 subsoil plots, same size sites. What we see here is an interesting trend. The sites that have higher carbon have higher variation. The sites that are lower in carbon have smaller, more narrow box plots. This is very worrying because we're thinking that this is the critical threshold of where we're going to see tipping points for degradation, that we may not have the seed stock, we may have such compaction. So we need to urgently start restoration here before we cannot restore it. I put this line here. Jonathan may be the only one who knows what it means. This is the accepted soil carbon value for healthy soil. We don't have 90% of all of the plots are below that. So what we're working on now is developing regionally appropriate thresholds. Drylands, we would not even expect 20 grams per kilo, which is 2%. So I put that there to be provocative, and anyone who knows Lamar knows it rains all the time. It's barely a dryland, right? Finally, we take these data and we make maps. And this is a really cool project because we actually have 5 projects right now, all in rangelands, all for soil carbon VCS. So using Vera's methodology, and we've been so frustrated with the lack of rigor. We're actually doing, it's called a deviation, methodological deviation for these 5 projects to use the LDSF and to use the maps. Our maps are 90% accurate because they're what? Based on all those geographic soil samples. So this is black dots are clusters of 10 plots that we sampled for 3 straight months in northern Tanzania. And there is the variation of carbon in those clusters. So now imagine if it just says, I'm only giving you $100,000 to sample soil, which means I could only sample, a couple of clusters. I would dramatically underestimate the carbon. Or if I only sample these 4 clusters, I'd be overestimating the carbon. So the point is we stratify the sampling design, and I would say we do a good job of capturing variability, which allows us to make this also color yellow map. And why is it that color? Because we keep all of our legends the same scale, and it's low carbon in yellow, higher carbon in brown. So we are finally going to be answering some of these questions. We stratified this by management, wet season, dry season, grazing, restoration. So the next step now is looking at, okay, how is management impacting soil carbon? And I know, Sarah, it's only one variable. There's other variables. So finally, I can't go back. Finally, I just wanted to dispel another myth with data. We did carbon 14 dating on these LVSF sites, and guess how long some of the carbon is in the dryland topsoil? 400 years. So this is the proof. We know we can store carbon in soil, and we know it stays around for a while. And the subsoil, it was about 1,000 years old. So this is why we need to invest in ranger and restoration. And now, because of these big data sets, we are finally bringing evidence to bear. Okay, I'm going to change my. And I know you're going to be talking about it, but I added it. So I won't explain all of Stellar because I think Fiona will, but this is a really cool project about sustainable investments for large-scale rangeland restoration. But we need to advise, prioritize these investments, and that's where we're working on developing a global monitoring framework of rangelands for standards, for application in the rangelands. And I was actually on a panel with the Mongolian Minister of Forestry, and he was like, we used to think. I was like, I'll put you in touch with Fiona. So that's another application of the monitoring.
Thank you. Can write with the listener, the presentation. Thank you very much. So, we are going to the examples to our master presentation now about the actual experiences on tackling carbon sequestration through silvopastoralism. So, the first one is Sarah Valencia from Colombia. She was at uni and she's going to steer us through the experience in silvopastoralism.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna change a little bit the subject. I'm gonna talk about other benefits that we have with silvopastoral systems. So I'm gonna talk about silvopastoral-based strategies to mitigate empathic methane using fodder trees. So ruminant production is known for its significant contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions. It accounts for 14.5 to 19% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and is responsible for 56% of total agricultural emissions. Most of it come from empathic methane emissions. So, how does methane is produced? So, empathic methane is produced through the fermentation of the carbohydrates that goes to the rumen. It's fermented by ruminant microbiome, and it forms CO2, hydrogen, and volatile fatty acids as a source of energy for the ruminant. So the CO2 and the hydrogen is used by archaea to form methane that's released through the respiration of the animal and the burps. So In tropical regions, pastures are characterized by high structural carbohydrates and low food protein that exacerbates the emission of methane. So there is present need to explore effective strategies to mitigate synthetic methane emissions from ruminant production systems. So why is it important to reduce methane productions? First of all, well, climate change impact, excess of greenhouse gases have severe consequences for climate. And these constitutes a food security threat, and especially in low-income countries. So there's need to identify effective CH4 mitigation strategies that do not compromise animal performance, especially in countries where livestock play a key role for livelihoods. So, what are those strategies? So, effective strategies have been studied the last 20 years to reduce synthetic methane. So several compounds such as vaccines, antibiotics, hormones, and other chemicals have been studied to reduce synthetic methane. And though they have significant reductions, they have some disadvantages that Sophia mentioned this morning. They can have a residual effect on the product. They have a high cost, so it's not so viable for low-income countries. They can also have negative environmental impact, and they have low market acceptance. So we have a consumer right now that's looking for products that are more natural, so chemical components are not very attractive to the consumer. So in this sense, the incorporation of foliage through silvopastoral systems stands out as the most viable and cost-effective strategy for mitigating synthetic methane emissions among livestock producers. This picture is an intensive silvopastoral system from CIAT in Colombia. So how does fodder trees contribute to the reduction of synthetic methane? So apart that fodder trees can improve the nutritional quality of the diet of animals. They have secondary metabolites that are compounds produced by the plant to adapt to environmental conditions, basically. So this is an effective strategy, and these compounds can reduce up to 20% or more methane production. It has been shown that supplementation in tropical plants containing secondary metabolites is a practical approach for methane mitigations. Secondary metabolites like tannins and saponins, they can modify rumen fermentation to reduce methane. They can reduce archaea communities and other bacteria that are related to the formation of methane. And over 200,000 plants, secondary compounds have been identified, offering an ample potential for methane mitigation. So these are some of the results we have found in vivo studies. We have gotten from 20%, 21% of reduction using fodder trees. This is like one of the most significant results. That's the result from my master's thesis, 50% reduction with the use of pods of Salmonella saman. It's a tropical species. However, this reduction is not only due to the secondary metabolites, but because these pods have starch content that can modify also rumen fermentation. So that's one of the reasons we have those results there. So, as we are talking about other regions, and so I haven't worked a lot in arid regions and deserts, but I have some friends that have. I only have like a meta-analysis of this species here. That's mesquite. It's also found in other arid regions of the world. So in Mexico, semi-arid and arid semi-arid and dry subhumid zones stretch over 128 million hectares approximately. That's more than half of the country. This species, this prosopis, has high value and secondary metabolite content and function as bioactive compounds. These compounds are also used as antimicrobials. And small ruminant farmers in other regions in Mexico have found that supplementing mosquito coils is a cost-effective strategy to feed their flocks with an energy and protein source that improve productive performance. This is the meta-analysis we've made of prosopis. We found that in vivo trials demonstrated a reduction of methane emissions in the region of small ruminants, about 20% reduction. It's a nutritious forage, a rich source of energy, protein, and bioactive compounds. And producers from these regions have found that supplementing small ruminants with mosquito coils increase intake, weight gain, and feed efficiency. As of Colombia, the case of Colombia, the Ministry of Environmental initially approached the tropical dry forest from the National Action Plan to combat desertification. This is the entity that's in charge of implement the guideline for the UNCCD in Colombia. So in Colombia, we have tropical dry forests, and we have a very small portion here of an arid region, just up here. Why are important tropical dry forests in Colombia? Because of this. Some estimate that of 8 million original hectares, only about 720,000 hectares remain. So this is due to deforestation or livestock production in Colombia. So it's a very significant value there. So we have Caribbean plains that has great tropical dry forests up here. And we also have the Magdalena River Valley and the Cauca River Valley that also have dry forests here. So I'm going to talk about some two case studies there. So we have La Guajira. This is a semi-arid region with a certification level of approximately 87.5%. Classified as Great Caribbean dry belt with two large biomes, tropical desert and tropical dry forest. We have something very special here, just in the middle of the desert. We have a tropical dry forest there. It's it's a national park. And AgroSavia, that's the investigation organization for the National Investigation for Agriculture in Colombia, have identified several species that are used by pastoralist communities in this region, such as Guasuma omnifolia, Penicillium dulce, Celsalpinia coreana, and Cordia alba. These have studies that can reduce methane emissions, are adaptable to dry condition, and can withstand drought. They provide high quality forage for ruminants and also soil improvement. So this is the work that AgroSavia has been doing with pastoralist communities in La Guajira. They identified about 15 species for silvopastoral systems, and they made agronomic evaluation and also nutritional evaluation of the species. And now they are planting the trees and doing silvopastoral systems also with the community here. Okay. As for Cauca, Colombia, where we have tropical dry forests, there's some communities that live here with, they're living from planting crops and raising cattle. They have very long roads. So CIAT made some work with them and introduced improved pastures and also the pastoral systems like in 2006 approximately. And they identified 16 species in the pastoral systems for these producers, like Leucaena and other ones that are here. 4 of them have been evaluated to reduce methane emissions with significant results also. very fast. So these are the silvopastoral systems they have, the producers have there. So this is like a message. The small livestock producers in developing countries traditionally use a variety of tropical plants to feed their animals. This practice, although not always recognized, contributes significantly to the mitigation of enteric methane mitigation. It is necessary to communicate this contribution to public opinion and decision makers within their areas of influence, highlighting its importance in the context of sustainability and the fight against climate change. So they're doing already the work and we have to recognize it. So these are the challenges and future directions also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah. And we are going to jump from one side of the ocean to the other. We have to explore, and he's going to show us some examples in the applicant for influence. Okay? So the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Another presentation. It's not done. Thank you very much, Pedro. Good afternoon, everybody. That's one. Yeah. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. So, with you some work did in Ferlo, the silvopastoral area, located in North Senegal, and talking about a local strategy adopted by Senegalese pastoralists to update and mitigate the consequences of climate change. Okay, so this presentation will focus on 5 points. 5 little points. The first is we will talk about Ferlo. What is the Ferlo? What is the locality of Ferlo? What is the characteristics of Ferlo? And show that is a region with a vulnerable territory with fragility ecosystem. Secondly, talking about the impact of climate change on livestock farming in the Ferlo. And the third point is the local adaptation strategy adopted by the pastoralists in Senegal. The role of local, national, and international actors for helping this community to develop resilience and finally the conclusion and perspective. Talking about the Ferlo region is the area in north of Senegal. It's a semi-arid region with annual rainfall between 200 and 300 millimeters. And just 3 months of rain. So one set of Senegal territory around 70,000 kilometers square. And in the area, pastoralism is the main activity practiced in silvopastoral reserve and classified forest. As you can see in the map, the green area is silvopastoral area, whether silvopastoral reserve or classified forest. And this area is characterized by a fragile ecosystem, threatened by climate change and overgrazing, because in this area we have this area hosts 1/3 of the national ruminant livestock population. We talk about the impact of climate change in the livestock region. The first impact is the decrease of pastoral availability. The rainfall is not enough, and when the rainfall is not enough, the pasture also will not be enough. And loss of income and increased vulnerability of pastoral community, like as you can see in the photo, is a cow in a deep of dry season, we have not enough gas, not enough water, and that's impacted that impact cow healthy and things like that. So, right in conflict over resource access, especially between farmer and ruler, and proliferation of invasive species such as Georgia's candies. That's the one of that we find in Senegal now. It is an invasive species colonized the area in this region. Faced to this problem, what it is constraint, pastoralists are going to some strategy to be resilient, and one of them is mobility. Mobility is the first strategy Senegal pastoralists adopted for being resilient, and this mobility involves the seasonal mobility and the daily mobility. The seasonal mobility help people, pastoral community to move one area to another area, finding grass or finding water or finding the market livestock. The second strategy developed by this community is diversification of species and activities. Of species, as you know, before the growth happened in Senegal in 1972, pastoral community focus in one space, just a cow. But when the growth is happening, they need to diversify the species and integrate the hidden of and sheep. And we need also to diversify the species, like goat, sheep, and cow. And also, you need to add the winter cropping, because only animals is not enough for helping to have a livelihood, a good livelihood. They need every year to practice winter crops for helping them to become resilient. And another strategy is the development of a dairy farming system. In some area in the field, people stop to move, people stop to be on animals and stay in one area. But for become resilient, they start to sell milk. When some enterprise is implanting in this area and help people to buy the milk product by these people. And another strategy is to use the fruit, to use the ecosystem services for selling and help them to become resilient. The last strategy adopted by this community is the adaptation of supplementation practices through the podcast of livestock feed and other input. Like as you can see in this first photo, that is animal feed in the market, and also practicing the crop forage and use animal feed, use this product, this input for feeding animals. So in face of this problem, what is the role of local actor, national and international actor? Let me talking about what in the level of a state. What the government, national government need to do? One is implementation of adopted policy, but in Senegal and like in another inside another country, livestock corridor is not security. And government to do support for adaptation strategy, such a mobility be secure, transhumance corridor and patrol area. These are focusing, I think, help community to become very, very resilient. Support for community-based approach and mechanism for natural resource management. In the area, we are a lot of approach, a lot of local mechanism to help people to have a good management, good resource management, like the PRMs, participant management, or one to we call it the UP, pastoral unit, to help people to have a good managing around a borehole or around another point of water, and to to develop some practices, help them to have a good, rational exploitation for these resources. It's also developing and transfer of knowledge and technology. We are not in the development of technology. So what we see in this area, technology can help community to awareness and to have a good forecast. For example, for the rainy season, some services product forecast for the people, for the pastoralists, they help them to know what is the first area people will be coming, or what is the first area they can find a good grasses. And at the level of local actors, when I talk about local actors, it involving the local elected official in the level of commune or in the level of department or region, and also pastoral association and leader. One of these, they need to propose special planning, because in Senegal, the first tool of planning is in the level of community. In the level of community, you have many tools who help the community, who help official representative government to have a good planning or good land planning. It also prioritize national resource exploitation. National resource exploitation have a good practices for exploitation is removed. This is resource, because resource is not enough in dry season, and when resource is not enough, we need to have a good exploitation. Implementing an approach, and in this level of NGOs and international organization, we need to they need to have a support of pastoralist strategy. When I talk about pastoralist strategy, in mobility is a diversity of expertise and activities. Develop action for restoring degraded land and strengthening the capacity of people. When I'm talking about restoration, as you can see in this photo, that is some practices developing by the Beach green wall in Senegal, in north of Senegal, and they try to restore the land of the beach, and also to employ to plant tree. And this is a practice who can help the people to become resilient, because it's not only grass. It's not, people don't only use grass for alimentation, for animal alimentation. They use only the tree, like cut the branches or the or another, or the for help them to become to have a good animal alimentation. And for conclusion, we can say pastoralist community are adapting to the consequence of climate change by deploying various strategies. However, to strengthen this resilience, it is necessary and imperative to develop adaptive public policy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So that's the last of our panelists. I'm giving the floor to Anne Nottenbart, so she can manage the questions and answers that are still in the room, and then she will close the event. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Pedro. Are we comfortable on the seats where you're sitting, or would you like to come? Okay, good. So I think we have, let me come in on the screen. So we've heard really a variety of inputs from our different presenters. So I'm sure lots of ideas for these questions, comments, feedback. Lee, go ahead. Let me run around with the microphone also.
Actually, I wanted to follow up on your presentation. I know you're not representing youth, right? But like all youth, but I would like to hear a bit more when you talk about migration, conflict, degradation in the Great Green Wall. What are some of the things that youth could do to, build sustainable restoration in these rangelands? We have 3 EU projects now across the Great Green Wall. rangeland restoration. And I am a big advocate that we need to engage more with the youth because that's the future. Do you feel comfortable talking about that?
Talk on behalf of the youth.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Maybe my challenge is communicate in English. French is my language, but it's not very easy to communicate in English, but let me try. I think youth play a good role in this restoration because in this case of green great vault, they use the youth for planting the tree. They use the youth for making sensibilization because in the pastoral areas, it's not easy to develop restoration with planted tree. Something mentioned it that in this presentation, when you want to restoration by planted tree, you need fence it. You need fence it. We need fence the plot. Or when you fence it, you private the pastoralist the space because is become very difficult pastoralist put his animal inside. But one thing the green grid vault do in the fair but use the youth and also the local chief, the traditional power for making a good sensibilization, for helping the community to have a good understanding for the income of restoration, maybe land restoration and forest restoration also.
Yes, Jonathan.
Thank you. Question for any of the speakers, really. I think I missed the first one. I don't know if there was anyone before Lee, but maybe for you two guys. So I'm often concerned when we talk about silvopastoral systems because there's always a doubt in my mind about how you get the right balance between the trees and the grasses. And there's always a lot of pressure from especially the environmental sector to go for trees. And it's like, trees are good, yes, so more trees are better. And ultimately, you don't have any pasture left. And then the system changes. And I find that a real problem in this convention with countries, and with your country in particular. Senegal has been a real challenge in the Great Green Wall, not to get too many trees. So how do you manage that? Is it guesswork? Is it the community opinion counts? Or is there some technical guidance that you can use to get the right kind of balance?
Okay, thank you for your question. In the case of, well, according to my experience, especially, there are some pastures that are more resistant to the shadow of the trees. So we have to select the adequate pasture too, not only the trees. I mentioned before that some tree species can be very invasive. So they need management also. Silvopastoral systems need management. That has a cost. And the other experience I've seen is that in Hacienda San Jose, I talked about Hacienda San Jose this morning. They have a silvopastoral system also, but by natural regeneration. They don't burn the savannas, so most of the native trees have grown there. But it's gonna be a moment that there's gonna be a moment they're gonna have to control those trees because there's too many already. So we're gonna have to control a little bit of those trees because we're going to be the forage is going to be reducing there. So I think there has to be a control, and the selection of the pasture also is important.
Actually, in that Tanzania data, we're seeing more shade-loving species, the more of the sporoboluses, because there haven't been elephants to regulate the tree. So can happen every direction.
Thanks, John, for the question. So it's not just technical. I mean, the community have to agree to the tree. And I mentioned in my talk that, look, you need to target maybe multi-purpose tree, which has value for value chain or something. This will be accepted by the community. In terms of technical, You cannot plant tree in every ecosystem. Like in pastoral system where like in the arid, like this part of the world here, planting tree can change the whole ecosystem, and you may end up with more desert in the long run. And but it's something which we say we don't. Myself, I don't agree with the concept of quick fix solution. So planting tree and then of course we have to go with native species. So and you have to be careful if it is invasive or not. So all these factors, tree require water. There are some techniques and using GIS and digital elevation model, you can identify the spots where tree can be planted. You include soil, you include topography aspect and so on, because north facing and south facing slopes have different, I would say, microclimate, which would favor certain species over species. Thank you.
Maybe eventually, if things don't go well, we can try the flocks into the forest and eat everything, so the problem will be solved.
Yes. Maybe you can also introduce yourself before you ask the question.
Hi, I'm Michael Cullen from Terra Global Capital in California. Dr. Winowecki mentioned in terms of the carbon content of the landscape that you were working with Vera on the methodologies, and I'm wondering how that's evolved, and two, what your view is of the potential for carbon credits from these landscapes and what that future looks like.
Thank you. And thank you also for visiting our lab in Nairobi. Vera is now going to be developing they have the new monitoring that's coming aside all of their standards, and some of our LDSF plots are included in that. Spatially explicit sampling design for composite samples, 1,000 meters squared. None of that was in any of the previous Vera standards. You could literally kick soil around, put it in a bag, and get certified. So that's an improvement. Also, they are more accepting methodological deviation, but it's really funny because it has to meet this greater than 90% threshold, which is hilarious because none of their methods reach that. But despite my cynical comment, I am hopeful. And I think it's back, sorry, Birta, put you on the spot. It's back to what Birta said. We as scientists need to do a better job communicating to the certifiers, to the policymakers beyond the choir. Yeah, so I'm hopeful.
Thanks, Lee. We have, I think, time for one last question, if it's there. If not, then I can close off by thanking everyone and inviting all of us to continue the discussion without being filmed, without having to use the microphone. But I think we have met a bunch of people that are interested in the same things, that approach the problem from a slightly different perspective. So really complementary people in the room. So let's continue talking and see what we can do. Thanks a lot. And